I have the keys to the 2023 Genesis GV60. This is a lot like the posh cousin of the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 because they all ride on the same platform. This is Genesis' first ground-up EV, and I want to see if it's worth spending more money to grab something a bit more luxurious, even if it shares the same chassis as other cheaper alternatives. Now, if you want to buy a Genesis GV60, you're going to be looking at a starting price of $103,700 before on-road costs and before any incentives. This one here is the all-wheel drive performance version of the Genesis GV60, so you're going to be paying $110,700 for this car here. Now, what do you get when you spend that amount of cash on a car like this? Well, the question is not what you get, but it's what don't you get. There are so many features thrown at this car, especially since all GV60s arriving in Australia all come fitted with the luxury pack. So in terms of the battery that's underneath this car, you're getting a 77.4 kilowatt battery with 800 volt battery architecture, which means it's pretty good at being very efficient. And that's good for a real world range of around 412 kilometers as indicated by our car when fully charged. Now this car here has dual motors, both front and at the back, and that means that this can hit 0 to 100 in around 4 seconds. Now you do get these cool LED headlamps with very good high beam up front, and you also do get a 360-degree parking camera with 3D effect, and you also do get a clamshell bonnet which wraps around the top of these fenders to help with aerodynamics. Now this car here has a mint metallic paint job which makes it look quite unique, but it is a bit more silvery in person. You have 21-inch alloy wheels wrapped in a Michelin EV tire. You also have these automatic doors which pop open when you unlock the car and then pop close when you lock it or driving, again to help with aerodynamics. And you'll notice that your mirrors look a lot different from other cars because this is actually a camera that sticks out from the car, and you get a camera feed on the inside. So that means this helps again with increasing your range by being a bit more aerodynamic. And this car also comes with a vehicle to load adapter, which just means that you put this into the charge port of your car and it gives you a household plug on the outside. So it means if you go camping or you need to use any power outside your car, you basically have a portable power brick using this adapter. And you're also getting a pretty big rear wing which sticks off the back of the car here. And of course, since Genesis is owned by Hyundai, you get remote parking, which you can activate on your key, you remote start the vehicle, and you can use this to park in and out of tight spaces if it means you don't have to squeeze between another car or wall. And it's also a really good way to freak out any people who have never seen this before, and it does have sensors to stop just in case it gets close to an obstacle. Now in the back, you are getting a very comfortable area. You have a large panoramic glass roof, which has some nice shutters, which means no light can get through if you want to block it out. You also have these rear window shades. You have Bang & Olufsen speakers on the door. You have rear heated seats for the outer two seats. You have two USB-C charging ports. You have a large center area here in the center console to store any items. You have some map pockets. And what I will say is that it is a very comfortable seat. But yes, again, you can sort of notice that there is a battery underneath you because your knees are a little bit far away from the seats. They're very comfortable seats, but I have no room in front of me to put my feet underneath the driver's seat, which is just a little annoying for long-term comfort. And then underneath this bench seat here, you have another AC port, so you can charge things like a laptop without having to bring an adapter. And what else is good, if you want more space and you are sitting in the rear left seat, you can use these controls in front of the front passenger seat and actually push it forward to give yourself the most amount of room you absolutely need, which is just very luxurious. And then dotted above my head are acoustic control little sensors, and it basically helps this cabin stay nice and quiet via sound cancellation, which is very luxurious. Now up front is easily the most impressive area to be. You have so many features thrown at you in here. I have two 12.3-inch displays, one large center infotainment and another large driver display. I also have some displays here which are for my side view cameras, which are very useful and are very easy to adjust via a large dial here on your right. I also have a very large heads-up display as well. Now you get 18-way adjustable leather seats up front which have a zero gravity effect where they'll pivot back on their rear access to give you as much comfort as you possibly need. You can extend out the support for your knees, which is very good. And then depending on which drive mode you're in, or if you customize it yourself, the lumbar will squeeze in automatically to keep you in place, say if you're in sports mode or boost mode. Now here in the drawer type glove box which you get, you also see a little certified and recommended sticker for these seats from a bunch of different orthopedic associations. So Association Forum for Healthy Back and Federal Association of German Back Schools and Campaign for Healthier Backs all recommend these seats for your ergonomics of your car. So it's an actual certified ergonomic seat, which is very unique and quite cool. Now these front seats are heated and cooled, and I also have a heated steering wheel, and I also have an electronically adjustable steering wheel here to get nice and comfortable, which is again very luxurious. You have this floating center console design, but I can't get it to move by any means, so it's more stuck in place, unlike the one you'll find in the Hyundai Ioniq 5. You have a fingerprint sensor to save your driver profile, which is so much easier than having to readjust everything if you're swapping drivers constantly. Now we also have this crystal here in the middle, and if I start up the car, it flips 180 degrees to reveal a rotary style shifter. And it's not just a rotary style, it's actually a rotary design similar to like you'd find on an old telephone. And it has a haptic feedback where if you go into reverse without having to look down, it will vibrate to let you know that you've gone to reverse, which is very useful. Now down here, I've got a huge cubby for any large water bottles, which is very useful. And I also have two USB Type-C ports and a 12-volt socket up front. Now here in the center screen, it's a really easy to use UI, but the screen is quite large, so while you're driving, trying to reach over to the far left controls can be a little bit distracting. That's why you have a little dial in front of your shifter to help you navigate that screen, which I found very useful that you have that option as well as a touch screen. And it's also cool to see your EV information up here to schedule charging at home, or actually seeing where the next charger is, and also seeing how much range you have left. And I also really like this wireless charging pad, which you slide down here. Your phone easily sits in place, and I've had it charged successfully most of the time, which is quite cool. But then this center storage area, because you've got that space for the rear occupants, it's very shallow and not entirely useful like the rest of the storage in this car. And if you're wondering if Genesis build quality is any good, it is excellent. This build quality is awesome. There's no squeaks, rattles, or anything. The materials are quite nice. If you're comparing it to other brands and their build quality, this is far superior, and you're probably paying the same price for another product which might not feel as good as this. Now it's clear that this car has plenty of cubbies on the inside for any small items, which is all very practical, but how is the boot? Well, it's an automatic boot which opens up, and I've come on a small road trip to get to this location, so there's a simulated amount of stuff for a day trip, and you'll see this is a very adequate amount of space for a small SUV. You have an included cargo cover, which I really quite like, and you also have an included cargo net, which I'd strongly recommend you use, because if you don't use that, any loose items like this will scratch up against this hard plastic and make quite a racket. Now, just like the Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6, this has that slanting roof line, which means you don't get that boxy SUV amount of space, but it is still relatively practical. Now, if you want more space, you can also fold down the seats in a 60-40 split. Now, unfortunately, underneath the boot floor, you only have some small compartments. There's no spare tire for this car. Instead, there's a tire repair kit, which is included from Genesis underneath here, as well as a first aid kit and a warning triangle. But what is useful is that underneath this clamshell bonnet, you do have some extra storage, which is very useful, again, for any small items like charging cables, but it is not a huge area. At least there's a little net in here to keep those smaller items in place without them flying around, but it is just such a small area, it's really only going to be good for like a toiletries bag. Now let's talk reliability. The Genesis GV60 is so new that there aren't really any owner reviews over a long period of time to see how reliable all the electronics, features, and battery and motors are. However, there is a Kia EV6 that's been reviewed on productreview.com.au, and they said they've had a 5 out of 5 experience and have enjoyed driving their car, so that is a good sign. But in general, EVs have less moving parts, and from a brand like Hyundai, you can hopefully expect most of these components to last over a long period of time without many issues. Now, in terms of the warranty for this car, when you buy it, you get a 5-year unlimited warranty, which does include an 8-year high voltage battery warranty, and it includes 5 years of complimentary servicing. In that complimentary servicing, if you live within 70 kilometers of a Genesis studio, which is like their dealership, trips, you will get someone to drive out to you, pick up your car, drop off a loan car, and they will drive your car to the service center, get it serviced, and then drop it back to you. Now you also get 10 years of 24/7 roadside assistance, and you also get a 10-year complimentary map updates, which is, you'd hope you'd get that in a car like this. But here's the other cool thing that this car gets that something like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 don't get. You get the option to either get 5 years of free charging via a ChargeFox subscription to this car when you buy it, or you can get the option to get a free fast charger installed into your house. But it's a choice of one or the other. If you're asking me, I would get the fast charger installed into my house because that's where my car's going to be most of the time. The Genesis GV60 scored a 5 out of 5 in an ANCAP rating, which is again very good. Now, when you're driving an electric SUV that has its batteries on the bottom, you're less likely to get involved into a rollover, which is again very safe. And so my top 3 favorite safety features in here include the blind spot cameras, which pop up in your gauge cluster when you're going to indicate on top of the digital cameras you already have. I really like the autonomous emergency braking, which again works when you're parking. So if you get too close to something or you're about to hit it, the car will intervene and stop the car, which is very good when you're parking in a tight space. And then number 3, I really love the active lane keep assist. It's really quite active, it works really well. It's 130 kilometers and we have 140 kilometers.
I thought it was 100 kilometers.
No, it's 129 kilometers to that charging station. What do you reckon?
I thought it was 100.
No, it's 129.
And you got how much?
140.
It's kind of tight, that one.
Yeah.
But if it's going to get you there, but you reckon it could come out at 10 kilometres a go?
Yeah.
What do you do when it runs out?
It just dies by the side of the road.
And what do you got to do? Who can charge it?
You have to get a tow truck to the nearest charger.
No, you don't.
Yes.
Okay. What's the nearest one into Canberra? One of those slow ones to go and get the juice.
What do you reckon?
Well, my bet was Goulburn, but you're worried about it.
It says 120.
Therefore, we've got to go to Canberra.
We could run the gauntlet.
Yeah. Will it go back up a little bit?
No, the range won't go back up. I could extend it by turning off the aircon. Yeah, we get 6 kilometers extra by doing that. Okay, so now we're driving this thing, and it drives very similarly to the other cars I've driven that share this platform, like the Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6. Now, here's a bit of a dilemma I have at the moment. At the time of filming, I've driven out from Sydney, stopped in Goulburn for the high-powered charge, which is basically a fast charger that's faster than 50 kilowatts, and then I proceeded to come to here. Had to do some filming up and down, and now I'm left with 139 kilometers left of range. Now, the fast charger back in Goulburn, which I can guarantee gives me the quickest charge rather than sticking around with the 50 kilowatt hour chargers, which are quite few and far between here in Canberra, considering how high demand they are. I'm going to run the gauntlet and see if we can make it with some leftover charge to that charging station. Otherwise, I will be taking advantage of that 24/7 roadside assist to tow me the rest of the way. So I'm going to be coasting in eco for most of the time, but yeah, that's just something at the back of my mind while I'm driving this thing. Now, as I'm cruising along here, I'm using navigation, which is quite useful. And to be honest, I really like the inbuilt navigation in this car. It uses that AR overlay, which makes it a lot easier when a turn is coming up, and it animates up the road, as you can see here on, in the infotainment here. And look, it does a really good job of just pointing you in the right directions, which I like quite a lot. How does this thing drive? Well, we got 3 drive modes. We have Eco, Comfort, and Sport, and we have one extra one, which is Boost, which delivers the full 360 kilowatts and 700 newton meters of torque. Now, cruising through here, you can feel the weight of this car. It is a heavy car because of all those batteries. There's no masking that. And then the other thing as well is that this thing is just very comfortable for most of the trip. I don't find it as comfortable as the GV70 electrified. I'm not too sure why that is, but it does feel a little bit lower and it soaks in a few more bumps. But as for noise cancellation, does a really good job of keeping out external road noise and wind noise, which I've really appreciated. Now in Eco, this thing drives like a very normal car. Go into Comfort, you get a lot more power from that all-wheel drive setup. And then what's cool as well is that this car is actually rear-wheel drive bias with its power delivery, because the more powerful motor is on the rear wheel. And so when you jump into Sport, it will give you a lot more of your power, but it doesn't give you access to that full 360 kilowatts and 700 newton meters of torque. So you're good for 0 to 100 around 4.6 seconds using sport mode, and the bolsters do squeeze you in, and these seats are extremely comfortable that way. And then also you do get more of a sporty driving experience, and those Michelin tires grip for days. Even after this car has been through 10,000 kilometers of driving, I'm not too sure if these are the original tires. They have seen a bit of wear, but they do still grip quite nicely. And of course, this being an electric car, you can expect the traction control to work a little bit more actively than, say, a petrol car, so you get a lot better grip through corners. Now, if I jump into boost mode, you get 10 seconds of boost, which is pretty violent. And you press that button and you just fly. And it's 10 seconds of overboost, and it's an amazing experience. I really like that, and it's very entertaining to use, and it's the best party piece that this car has. It's a lot like the ludicrous mode you'd find on a Tesla. And of course, that will give you the 0 to 100 time of 4 seconds. Now, as for regen braking and braking, you have these paddles here to adjust how much regen braking you want. I usually put it on the one pedal driving mode known as iPedal, but you can turn it all the way off to coast and just sort of cruise around if you want. Now, as for the brakes, they are nice and strong when they jump on, and if you're using regen braking, you're rarely ever touching the brake pedal, which is quite a fun experience. It's a pretty easy to drive car. Anyone can jump into this thing, and thanks to those different drive modes putting out different power outputs, you're going to be having no problem finding a drive mode that works for you day to day. And since those different power outputs are delivered at those different drive modes, you're actually going to have a more range if you go into eco mode, which I'm utilizing right now to try and get to that fast charger, compared to comfort and sport, or if you're just abusing that boost mode. Now, there is a secret drift mode in this car, which I legally cannot show you because we are on public roads. But yes, there is a sequence of buttons that you press and you can access a drift mode. And so that is quite cool and very, you know, just not Genesis, considering that this car is meant to be a luxury SUV. Now, daily driving this thing has been awesome. You just jump in, the ergonomics are great in the seats, super quiet, super easy to drive around in. Radar cruise control and active lane keep assist and active steering assist as well works really well. And just daily driving this thing has been an absolute treat. Now, my accumulated info for this car includes the fact I've been driving for about 500 kilometers in this car, and I've seen a efficiency rating of around 21.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is pretty efficient. I would have liked that figure to be a little bit lower, and it will be if you're around the city, but if you're like me and testing it out on the highway and going interstate, then yes, you will see a slight difference in terms of that efficiency going a little bit higher, like pushing above 20. And so to wrap it all up, there is something that is kind of nerve-wracking, to be honest. So we stopped in a charging station on the way down to our filming location, which was in Goulburn. We were just outside of Canberra, and then did some filming. We now have 131 kilometers left of range. Now, here's the kicker. The charging station I'm trying to get to, because I know it's the fastest charger and also one I'll spend the least amount of time at, and also it means that I don't have to go hunting for a charger and waste my time around here for a slower 50 kilowatt charger, because this NRMA charge box charger is something that's capable of charging a lot faster than that. Yeah, that's 119 kilometers away now. So we're cutting it pretty fine, and I'm very keen to see if this car does display an accurate range, because oh my gosh, I am sure hoping it is. Otherwise, I will be learning how to use 24/7 roadside assist and see how good it is. So I can review that for you if we don't make it all the way to that fast charger. So I'm either gonna update you with me arriving at that charger, or I'm gonna update you on the side of the road. And so we barely made it to this charging station. I had 4 kilometers left, which was around 3%. Got 2 warnings, one at 10%, one at 5%, which definitely wasn't relaxing at all. And another thing is that I had to drive around with the air conditioning off and the windows up to make sure we could maximize our range. So by being on the faster charger here, I could charge from 0 to 80% in around 23 minutes. And then just for that extra bit, I'd be waiting for just under an hour to get a full charge. And that's because this car here can accept 350 kilowatts max. And so it means you'll get a faster charge if you get into a faster charger like this. Now, why didn't I charge in Canberra? Well, Canberra has seemingly not upgraded its fast charging network in the past couple of months. I have haven't been there since my last trip. So everything is either a 50 kilowatt charger or a trickle charger. And those 50 kilowatt chargers are very rare to find, usually at hotels. There is one in one public space for the whole city, and it's usually occupied. Now, if you're in the market and you have the budget for a luxury electric SUV of this size, then the Genesis GV60 cannot be overlooked. But if you don't care about the luxury element, you don't really need all that performance, then yes, you can have the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 for less money and you still get a brilliant electric car. But if you are looking for a slightly faster EV for around the same money, then the Kia EV6 GT is on its way, and that should be pretty exciting to check out. So if you don't want to miss out on that review, make sure you're subscribed to Product Review Cars, and also make sure you leave a review of your car at productreview.com.au for us to use in future reviews, because we'd love to hear what it's like to own your car. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you in the next one.